Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app, O'Connor and Company.
You made it to Friday. It's the 16th day of May. Thanks for tuning in and getting your day started so you can end your week and launch into that weekend the right way on O'Connor and Company. We appreciate it. 7:05, we're going to speak with Doran Spielman, author of When the Stones Speak. Now, he's an officer in the IDF, and he's got a great new book out about the Hamas Middle East situation. It's a good thing to keep in mind as we see President Trump wrap up his Middle East trip. Speaking of that trip, at 7:35, Morgan Ortegas is going to join us. She's a deputy special presidential envoy to the Middle East, works with Ambassador Steve Witkoff. 8:05, we're going to talk to former Maryland Governor Bob Ehrlich about Maryland losing their AAA rating under Governor Wes Moore. Hell of a job there, Gov. And then at 8:35, Frank Ray, country music artist, talk about National Police Week. It's Larry O'Connor. That chuckle you heard was my fellow Marylander, Patrice Unwin.
Yes. Happy Friday, Larry. We made it.
We did. It is a happy Friday. It's a happy Friday in many respects in this country, not only because of seeing President Trump's leadership in the Middle East is kind of actually inspiring, but we're also seeing huge ripple effect right now from the president's economic policies. We already got one report that inflation is down. It's funny when you say inflation is down. But inflation is down is not the same as deflation. Sure. It means that inflation is not growing at the rate that it had year over year. And in fact, this latest inflation number was the lowest, I believe, in 5 years, beating anything that happened under President Biden. That also defied everybody's predictions because of the tariffs. This was the April number, and everyone said, oh, it's going to be crazy because of the tariffs. And it wasn't. And now even news reporters like Axios, no friend of the Trump administration, are admitting that maybe the crisis over the tariffs aren't going to destroy the economy like they had predicted a month ago. And many economic predictors are sort of ramping back. I think it was J.P. Morgan that changed their prediction on the economy and said, oh, maybe we were not going to have a recession due to the tariffs. All of that happened earlier in the week. And then yesterday, another report indicating huge benefits for the retail sector. Here, take a listen to how they reported it on Fox Business.
Month over month, we actually saw a fall, negative 0.5, month over month for April PPI. That's the headline number. Wow. And so that's a pretty big difference. The estimate was for a jump of 0.2. So you saw a much bigger cooling of inflation at the producer price level month to month. Big surprise here. 2.4, the gain year over year. The estimate was 2.5. That's not as substantial. But then you go down to the core number, Maria, that also came in negative 0.4 on core PPI month over month. The street was looking for a gain of 0.3.
They were figuring 0.3, but it actually went down 0.4. Yes. Those are the wholesale prices that companies and wholesalers end up utilizing for when they take products to the market. So, Patrice, make all of this make sense. It sounds to me like everything costs less all of a sudden. Is that the best way to put it?
Well, certainly. I think you should be seeing some price decreases at your local grocery store right now. When we look back at Wednesday or Tuesday's consumer price report, the inflation report, groceries was one of the categories where we saw, the rise in prices lower than expected. Obviously, energy prices have been falling pretty significantly, and everybody knows it's not gasoline doesn't just fuel your car. It goes in, energy prices go into the production of the goods, the packaging of the goods that we buy, and the delivery, the transportation of those goods. So this is very good news, and it's a continuation of slowing growth in inflation that we've seen over the past few months. We started the year at 2.8%, and every month we've seen that decline. Last month it was 2.4, and now we're down to 2.3. The Federal Reserve is who everyone is watching, right, Larry? So what is going to happen with interest rates? Well, Jerome Powell has said, I'm not quite ready yet to lower interest rates. We're going to expect some, quote, supply shocks. He says here we may be entering a period of more frequent and persistent, potentially more supply shocks, which will be a challenge for the economy ahead. So thank you, Jerome Powell, for pouring a little bit of cold water on really what has been two very good inflation reports. And secondly, it's important to recognize the fears about the tariffs. The tariffs were implemented or announced in Liberation Day, we know, April 2nd. So this was the first inflation report, these two, that were expected to reflect consumers increasing prices and what producers or wholesalers are spending on prices. We were expecting to see some tariff impact there, and we saw nothing. In fact, we saw the opposite. Now, does that mean that we won't see some impacts from the tariffs down the line? Well, no. I mean, it's a maybe. It's questionable, but I don't think it's a guarantee that the tariffs are going to tank the economy. Why? Well, we're seeing China come to the table and negotiate. The United Kingdom come to the table and negotiate last week. And so you've got to imagine that all of the countries around the world are in very deep negotiations, and probably there will be a mass number of announcements over the next few weeks and months to come. And that's going to be good news for prices. So the bottom line, prices are dropping. You're going to be paying less at the grocery store, less at the gas pump. And if you're producing, hopefully you're not going to have to pay as much for the inputs of the goods that you're creating.
Okay. So, and this is why I'm confused, because look at how this is reported. And I think it's important, if everyone heard the audio clip we just played, every single one of these price drops for wholesalers, for the producers, this is the cost of products that they sell to each other before it ends up being the thing that you buy at the market. The drop defied what the experts predicted, right? Experts predicted an increase of 0.5 percentage point or close to 1 percentage point, and instead it was a drop of about 0.5 percentage point. So the experts got it wrong. But then you look at the way the experts report on the thing that they just got wrong. Here's a headline from CBS Market Watch. Wholesale inflation shows biggest decline since 2020, but the good news is unlikely to last. Why do they add but the good news is unlikely? And it's like, but we're still predicting things are going to be bad, even though in this article they have to admit that they were wrong about this initial prediction.
Well, it's for the same reason that Jerome Powell talked about, well, don't get too excited about these numbers because there could be supply shocks in the future. I think frankly, some economists have a slant, a political slant, and I do think that some of them want the tariffs to have a negative impact on the economy so that they would force President Trump to stop renegotiating these trade deals, to feel the pressure from, bad economic news. If you're an economist, you should be fair-minded. Present the data as it is, and hey, what is your analysis of it? But don't then report, but don't expect things to get worse. I mean, you could say, we don't know what's going to happen in the future. That's fair. But then to intentionally pour cold water because you don't like how good the report is, that's just biased.
Whenever I think about inflation, I always like to try to make it as simple as possible to comprehend.
Sure.
Some may call this description simplistic, not simple, but frankly, it works for me to comprehend it. And that is, what's the value of the dollar or the cost of products and how it gets affected by the government doing stupid stuff. And I lay it out there because the government, our legislators, the House of Representatives, they're in the middle of marathon sessions up on the Hill trying to work out how their reconciliation bill is going to fit with the budget, fit with the tax demands that the president and the American people has put on Congress, and fit with the overall momentum of the economy. So I guess what I'm saying is the government is about to do something huge, and that huge thing is going to have some kind of impact on the economy. It could be positive, it could be negative. It's not going to be nothing. So where do things stand with the big, beautiful bill, the the reconciliation package, and potentially tax relief, and potentially a bigger hole in our budget deficits? Let's get into that in just a moment. First, though, it's 5:15.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
Yeah, all right. So continuing this economic wrap-up with Patrice, our numbers cruncher. I do love the headline from Axios. Hard data suggests tariff-driven inflation and recession fears may be overblown. Hold on. So when you actually get hard data, when you actually get, what's another word for that? Facts. Now that we have the facts, maybe we were hysterical when we said we were going to have crazy inflation and recessions. And by the way, those fears may be overblown. Those were your fears, Axios. You were the ones reporting it. It's very. I love how third person this is.
They're pulling a Joe Biden cover up. I think we need to rename that. Anytime the news pretends like they didn't know what they reported or covered up in the past and how they fueled fires unnecessarily. Yeah, let's do that. Let's cover it.
Where do things stand now on the reconciliation package and how things are going?
Yeah.
I know that this is where the no tax on tips and other tax cuts are going to be implemented, but I know that there's a big push from mostly moderate Republicans in blue states trying to get those SALT revisions back. Those were the state income tax deductions that you could take that were removed back in 2017. There's Republicans in states, high-tax states like Maryland, New York, Illinois, and California who would love to see some sort of revision on that. But then that's going to change the income picture for the government, and then you got to maintain their income to pay for all of the junk that they've been paying for. So how is it looking from your eyes?
So today, the House Budget Committee is supposed to mark up some of the legislation that includes pretty much what about 11 of the different committees have put together so far. Earlier this week, the Ways and Means did the tax bill, which you laid out a lot of the different provisions, the child tax credit, the income tax rate staying low, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, all of that stuff. Now, there are about 3 factions of Republicans who are turning into holdouts. You've got the fiscal conservatives, think of your Chip Roy. They're worried about the Medicaid requirements that are not for work requirements they're not going to kick in until 2029. And so I agree with a lot of Republicans saying, no, if you can work, you can work now. If you want to get Medicaid, you can work now for that. And so they're concerned that the Medicaid requirements don't kick in soon enough. You've got you talked about those who are worried, the Republicans worried about the SALT deduction. And then you've got some folks who are also saying, okay, I'm reading more into this bill, and I'm seeing some surprises that I didn't expect. For example, increasing excise taxes on foundations. If we know foundations, a lot of them give money to charities, support their local charities. So there's concern, why are you increasing taxes on that? There are other Republicans also say, well, wait a minute, all of those Green New Deal Inflation Reduction Act subsidies, they need to be peeled back, and some of those have been kind of kept in there. So right now, Speaker Johnson has a big task on his hand. We have seen him corral kittens before. This is going to be a big challenge because you've got Republicans, particularly the SALT folks, who are very adamant. The SALT deduction was lowered to $10,000. Right, that's where it is right now. The new bill says $30,000. They want about $50,000 to $60,000, and they are willing to literally. I heard one of those members on TV yesterday saying, "Oh, why don't we just let the tax cuts expire if we don't get the SALT deduction increase?" He's literally saying, right, let's let taxes rise on just about every American. Right. So that we can get the deduction down the line. And so those are the different factions that are fighting right now, and it's going to be a challenge to see if anything happens with this vote today or even into the weekend.
That is a huge trump card that those guys have, though. The ones who are trying to hold out for a larger SALT deduction. It's like, listen, guys, if we don't pass a bill, I get everything that I want. I mean, yes, taxes go up for everyone, but they get their full state income tax deduction back, right? So it's a strong position to have, I would think. And then in terms of the Medicaid, the demand for the Medicaid requirements to be implemented early versus later, is that a fiscal consideration or is that a political consideration where they're like, well, we want work requirements for Medicaid, but we don't want to start it immediately because people need to ease into it? I mean, again, that has nothing to do with numbers. It has to do with what they can politically sell back in their district.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really more of what it is, and it's not just about the work requirements. It's also about making sure that illegal immigrants are not able to access Medicaid. People who are living in multiple states are not able to access Medicaid from two different states.
All the fraud that RFK
so some of the
laid
fraud,
out in his testimony the other day. Yeah.
Exactly, and the fraud does come with a price tag that does impact our fiscal bottom line. And then I neglected, but this is also an important one. We don't have scores. We don't have official price tags, so to speak, on these bills. So we actually don't really know how much it is, how much of the tax savings would erase the cost associated with extending the tax cuts. So that's what's going on here.
And, oh, by the way, once the House finally makes it happen and they pass this thing by one vote, the Senate's going to change it all anyway, probably.
Oh,
and they're all going to have to vote on a new package.
As you can imagine, we've already heard some of the most vocal Republican senators saying, this is a no-go.
It's 5:23.
All right, coming up, there's nothing like when a Republican or conservative owns a liberal in the media. We've got Sebastian Gorka eviscerating a Politico reporter. Plus, Governor Wes Moore blame game continues. Stay with us. It's O'Connor and Company at 5:30.
WMAL FM Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station. Making sense of the news. News Talk 105.9. News now. Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
Good Friday morning. It's 5:37 now as we finish up your week and launch you into the weekend in a good mood. There's a lot to be happy about. 7:05, Doran Spielman, he's a major in the Israeli Defense Forces reserves, and he's got a new book out called When the Stones Break, about that region and the conflict, and it's pretty timely considering President Trump's trip wrapping up there. Also at 7:35, Morgan Ortagus, the Deputy Special Presidential Envoy to the Middle East, will join us. She works with Steve Witkoff. 8:05, we'll talk to former Maryland Governor Bob Ehrlich. Maybe he'll run again now that Maryland has lost their AAA rating. Maybe we'll talk him into running against Wes Moore. 8:35, Frank Ray, country music artist, National Police Week. The White House was awash in blue light last night, honoring police officers for Police Week. Very cool thing to see.
I will just say that in honor of Police Week, there was a police bicycle parade through Crofton and a little bit on 301 and through Bowie. I happen to know because I got stuck behind it for about 15 minutes. But it was so wonderful to see police cars, police on bicycles. I mean, it was wonderful.
That's very cool. Bike police, huh? I mean,
I'm not talking about hundreds and hundreds.
like a peloton out there at the Tour de France. It's more impressive when they're on horseback, let's face it. But bike police are important. We're happy to see them, I'm sure, especially in that number. That's Patrice Onwuka, by the way. Good morning, Patrice.
Good morning. Happy Friday.
A friend of this program, Dr. Sebastian Gorka, a member of the media and also now an employee at the White House. He is, in fact, I think I had his card right here. It's such a long title, I always forget. He's a DAP. That's a Deputy Assistant to the President, right? Isn't that a DAP?
Okay.
And he's also heads up for the National Security Council, their strategies with regard to counterterrorism. And he was invited to speak about national security issues at one of these forums put on by Politico. They make a ton of money. Publications do this. They sit there. Yeah. They got their logo on the back screen. They sit in chairs, and they have a reporter interview an administration official. And so Gorka, first of all, he goes out there, and he's like, I don't even want to be here. I don't want to be here. I don't like Politico. I'm only here because I'm doing it as a favor to somebody in the White House. And then Dasha Burns. Now, Dasha Burns is the reporter. She's the blonde one that has her hair sort of slicked back like she's a supervillain in a DC Comics movie, right? Or, anyway,
or a Russian spy.
That could be a honeypot situation there, yes.
Yes.
Dasha Burns, and her name is Dasha. We got to look at that. Dasha Burns, White House bureau chief, and she's also the Playbook chief correspondent for Politico. She starts asking, now she's got Seb Gorka there, the president's in the Middle East. We've got strategies against radical Islamic terrorism, jihadis. We've got major concerns with who the hell came into this country when the border was open. We're killing bad guys left and right. We've just come up with a negotiated truce with the Houthis, which is a major terrorist group in the Middle East. There's a lot to talk to him about. So what does she ask him about? The Maryland man.
Oh, goodness.
Kilmar Abrego Garcia. She wants to know if we're
goodness.
getting our MS-13 neighbor back. So Seb was having none of it. So listen to how Dr. Gorka handles this. Let's go.
A member of Al-Qaeda. If you're a member of Al-Qaeda, you're a terrorist.
How do you know if they're members of these gangs? What I'm saying
You mean
is,
the tattoos MS-13 on their knuckles doesn't, that doesn't help it?
those
Do you have tattoos of Al-Qaeda?
the tattoo did not say MS-13.
wrist?
I don't want to get into that.
Oh, of course it does. It's just accidents that the four symbols represent the letters MS. See, this is why Politico is a joke. This is why you are gutter press and fake news. That those four symbols that just happen to comport with the letters MS and the numbers 13 don't, in this case, represent MS-13. You're sitting here live defending a member of MS-13. That's why I regret coming here, because this isn't journalism. This is protecting those who hate America. Shame on you. We are saving lives.
Sir.
Saving lives. How about Maryland fathers compared to Maryland mothers? Like Rachel Marin, mother of 5, raped and murdered and thrown in a ditch. How about Jocelyn Nungare, age 12, raped a mile from her home and thrown in a ditch? It's strange that Politico doesn't do articles about her, that mother, or that 12-year-old girl. Why is that? Why is the MS-13 guy with the knuckle tattoos more important in terms of due process than the lives of 12-year-old girls brutally raped? It's weird that the priorities shift to defending the member of an FTO, but not the children and the women.
Oh,
There's something
my
cathartic
goodness, that was
watching
beautiful.
that.
Larry, I could listen to that all day.
Oh, good, because he wasn't done. Here, there's a little bit more. Cut to.
Dan Crenshaw told me a story once of a 16-year-old girl who was smuggled across this border. The parents paid $5,000 for her to live in America, the land of milk and honey. She ended up locked in a room in New York, raped by more than a dozen men every day for 18 months until she escaped. She went to Dan Crenshaw's office, and I'm no friend of Dan Crenshaw's, okay? He's still got TDS. And that girl said to him, please close the border so another girl doesn't have to be raped by 12 strange men every day for 18 months. It's strange that Politico doesn't cover those stories. Could you tell me why?
We have covered.
No, you haven't. You have not covered those stories. I'd like to see the Jocelyn Nungare, Rachel Marin stories in comparison to the Russia collusion garbage. I mean, let's be honest here.
Let's move on.
You have an agenda.
Let's move on. That's my favorite when the reporters do that.
She was owned.
It's cathartic. There's actually a little bit more, so we're gonna play a little bit more of Gorka yesterday in this Politico forum, and then we'll discuss why it's an important thing to have a White House defend themselves and defend their policies. It's good to see. We'll get more of this in a moment. It's 5:43.
Hey, it's Chris Plant. Find out what the media don't want you to know. Coming up this morning at 9, right here on WMAL.
Well, Gorka wasn't done. This was a great appearance, I got to say it. It was a fun thing to watch. And I want to reiterate, this goes all the way back to the Bush administration, frankly, where the media has been out to attack and destroy Republicans and conservatives, and they call them all the worst things in the book. And Republicans have always taken the high road. Republicans, it's always been I'm not going to get down in the gutter like you. I'm just going to keep looking straight ahead, and I'm going to keep doing my job, and the truth will out, and all that. And as a voter, I always look at that and it's like, all right, if you're not going to defend yourself, you're not defending me either, right? Because I voted for you. So when they call Bush and Cheney Nazis and fascists and war criminals, and they didn't say anything to defend themselves, it's like, okay, so I guess that means I support a Nazi or a war criminal or something. Trump, in his first term, he did all of the defense. He was the one. He was the tip of the spear. I remember being on the air saying, where are all the president's men? Why is he doing all of this? Why is he the one who has to go on the attack? And now in this second term, he has a cabinet and he has a White House full of people who are not only ready to defend him, but they're good at doing media, like Seb Gorka, like Stephen Miller, the cabinet members are all good. I mean, it's refreshing, and I think it's very important when you recognize how important media is to the presidency.
Oh, no, I mean, I 100% agree with that, Larry. And, I think about Secretary Marco Rubio, who's able to eviscerate these reporters whenever they come out with something foolish about humanitarian efforts. And he talks about all of the ridiculous waste, fraud, and abuse, or waste of taxpayer dollars. So, I mean, this is important. And notice the crowd is silent. You can hear a pin drop because the people in that room are all the Politico reporters and Politico reporter wannabes. And they all run in the same circle, and they all ignore the stories that matter most. So this is as much toward her as it is towards everyone in that room.
Funny you should say that, because at one point somebody in the crowd started hissing like they're at Gorka. Right. Like, what? You got a leak? What? Did somebody let a snake out in here? So Gorka, of course, is fine, engaging with the audience. So here's cut 3 when the hiss happens.
So let me be clear here, okay? Let me be clear. When an organization is designated by the Secretary of State as a foreign terrorist organization, every single stinking member is a terrorist by U.S. law. There is no need for them to be adjudicated as a terrorist. Also, are you really hissing? What kind of a child are you? We're trying to save lives and you're hissing. Go back to high school and play spitball with your friends. What absolute children.
I've never played spitball before.
You've never used spitballs? Well, maybe not in Ukraine.
No spitballs in Ukraine.
Oh, wait. I think it took a minute for that to hit. Am I okay? All right, now I know.
All right, and then Dasha Burns here, very serious journalist, starts pressing Gorka on when there will be a deal with Ukraine. And here's how Gorka handled that.
Deals are all about timing. When the time is right, that's when the president is in the room with Putin. But my expectation is imminently.
What does imminently mean?
That's all you're getting. I detest the Politico. I'm only here as a favor to a friend in the White House. You know who you are. I detest the Politico. You're not going to get anything more from me than imminently.
I'm just doing my job and trying to get more information for the American people, sir.
You could tell, Larry, that she feels like she's half an inch tall right now because she knows he called her out so beautifully and so well, and everybody in that room, and there's no defense against what he said because she knows that he's telling the truth. And so she's like, oh, I'm just trying to get information for the American people. No, you're not.
No, they're not. And that's the funny thing. If they actually did conduct themselves in such a way where they're just trying to educate and inform the American people, they'd actually gain more respect. But Dasha Burns and other reporters like her, and you certainly see this play out on cable news, and let's face it, anybody who's writing for Politico right now wants to be a cable news star because that's where the money is, and they all know it. They don't just try to do their job and get information from the person they're interviewing. They combat with them. They argue with them. They debate with them. They fight with them. And in this case, talking about, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, end up taking up a cause and trying to fight on behalf of the subject in the interview instead of actually, if they really did just inform their audience, that would be another story altogether. Great job, Seb Gorka. Not bad. We taught him well. Let's face it. He got all his early media training here on WMAL, and he's making good for himself. It's 5:53.